Hi BookTube, it's Stephanie. Today I'm going to talk about all the books that I read in January, and I read 9 books that total to 2008 pages, which I thought was pretty good. And definitely there were some panicking in the middle. I will tell you what book I added just to add it because of said panic. But yeah, I read 9 books. I'm pleased with that. It was a lot, and I also read a lot more pages than that. But as for the pages I finished, or the books that I finished and how many pages those books were, it was 2008. And yes, I laughed when I said that out loud. So the first book that I finished was Adulthood is a Myth by Sarah Anderson, and I gave this 4 stars. It's basically a bunch of comic strips, you know, that the ones that you can find in magazines and stuff. I really enjoy the humor in those. They are very relatable for me. So, and I really don't know how to explain it, so I'm just gonna link her webpage down below and you can look and see yourself. Would I buy it? No. I borrowed it from the library. That's definitely a trend this month. But I did enjoy it. Just, as I said, I gave it 4 stars because I felt like it was very relatable for me. The second book I finished was Alana, The First Adventure by Tamora Pierce. This follows a girl and her twin brother, technically. They decide to switch places because she wants to be a knight and he wants to learn magic, but their father wants them to do the opposite. So they forge some papers and she gets sent to the capital to become a knight, and he gets sent to a monastery to learn magic. And yeah, she dresses like a boy. So that trope is there. I don't really mind it, and it fit because it didn't hide that she didn't have any. Basically in this book she goes through puberty. Thank you. They usually don't at all go through puberty. What's that? So I did enjoy that. It was fast paced. It didn't go in too deep in places, and I had fun reading it. I did feel like it should have needed at least 1 or 2 chapters after where we left off, mostly just to wrap it up a bit. It really ended like some kind of TV series where something exhausting had happened, and then the heroes of the TV show just sit there and breathe, and then it's like, watch the next episode. It felt a little bit like that. I did really like it. I had fun reading it, and I gave it 4 stars. The third book I read was TheBarely Nightingale by Catherine Auden, and look at me, I have a book that I actually own. Yeah, so this will stand here because it will have plenty of room. Trust me, it will. This is a story about a girl named Vasha who lives in the Russian outback or wilderness, and in this world, which technically could be our own, there are creatures and fake creatures kind of that lives in houses, in the woods and things like that. If you live in Sweden, there's a very similar kind of mythology when it comes to the creatures. But basically what's happening in this world is that Christianity takes more and more space, so to speak, and people stop believing in these creatures and stops with the customs and the habits and the sacrifice, if you will, for instance leaving food to them. And something is waiting to get out, to get loose, and we are following this main character who tries to help the creatures where she lives. As I said, these creatures exist in the Swedish folklore as well. Obviously the name in here are translated from Russian to English, and basically the descriptions of the animals or the creatures, they are the same as in Sweden and in the Scandinavian countries. So I felt like a lot of the descriptions about them were overdone, slightly too naggy, and yeah, I basically just wanted get to the point, get to the point, get to the point constantly. Basically, it should, according to me, have been at least 100 pages shorter. It was a long book, and yeah, it wasn't bad, but it just dragged on. I gave it 3.5 stars because basically once we had 150 pages left, that's when all the build up just, oh great, now we actually get to the stories. It felt like things could definitely have been removed that I don't know if they are important further on in the books because it is a trilogy, but they didn't feel necessary in this book at all, and they definitely could have been cut. Anything to not have over or almost 450 pages. Like, it did not need that many pages. But as I said, 3.5 stars because it did turn out to be an interesting book, but I'm not rushing to read the sequel. And now comes the book that I panicked because I realized that I needed to read some books. I picked up Babar, the Magician, because I found this list of Harry Potter prompts, and one of them were read a book by a French author. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce his name, you can see it on the cover. And yeah, I read it for that prompt because all the lists I found were either French classics or just French titles. So in the end I was like, okay, let's just see if I can see a cover that I recognize. I recognize this cover, so I was like, oh great, I know exactly what to read. Let's just get the book that. And I wasn't going to count it for anything else but that prompt, but panic over forgetting Illumicrate books, I counted for this. I gave it 2 stars. If I read it to a child or something, I probably would have given it more, but yeah. Another book that I read to fulfill some prompts was Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur. And now I have read the poetry I need to read this year. 2 stars. How to explain this in a way that doesn't make me sound completely without any type of compassion. This is her biography. That's what it's framed as. It's her story, and it's not memorable at all. And I know so many people who said that it impacted them a lot. They just felt like they got connected, they loved it. And I just went, like the first couple of sections, not like 4 or 5 stars, but like 3, something like that. Then the ending that so many people go, it was the best part, and I just went, no, it's someone who's upset that her relationship took a bad turn, and then basically start saying what a bad guy he was. I'm not saying that it was like a perfect relationship because it wasn't, but the way I have a thing that I don't like revenge songs for the exact same reasons. I just feel like, yeah, really, was your relationship that bad? You were just together with him for like 10 years? Sure. And I felt the exact same way when I read this one. So it wasn't a 1-star read, but it's 2 stars. What can I say? Next I finished a graphic novel, and that was Descender Volume 3, Singularities by Jeff Lemire. This is more of a backstory to the Descender series. We learn more about the background, about some of the characters in here. I felt This one did not grip me that much, but it was enjoyable. But if it had been an actual book, if the Descender series had been a book, I feel like this volume, these things that we learn about these characters would have been woven in a little bit more easily. In this case, it felt like, oh wait, we need to add these sections in so that people can learn about them and how they got to where they got. It just felt like, oh, let's just put it here, serve it, and then we're done. But yeah, the Descender series is following a world after their civilization was attacked by these very giant robots, and the AI of this society was blamed for it and are basically all executed. But something happens and they figure out that there is this one AI or type of AI that might be able to help them solve this mystery of why these giant robots came to them. I gave it 3.5 stars. The next book I finished was another one of my own books. This is The Martian by Andy Weir, or as it's called in Swedish, Ensam på Mars. And now it joins. These are the only 2 books that will stand there. So The Martian is about an astronaut who gets left on Mars because of some freak accidents. And he needs to live there until he can be rescued. There's lots of potato. The humor is brilliant. I love the humor. I don't really know what else to say about it, to be fair, because yeah, I liked it. We're following both Mark Watney, who is portrayed on this movie cover that I have, and he writes these logs that we get to read, and also sometimes we get like normal third person point of views. And then we are also following the crew on Earth and sometimes on Hermes, which is the spaceship that they first came to Mars with, that is now on the way back to Earth. And I really enjoyed it. I found it very believable most of the time, and as I said, I really enjoyed it. I did feel like some things could have been tweaked a bit to make it a 5-star read for me. This got 4.5 stars for me. The first one being that there's a section at the end, and I'm not going to say what it is because then I will spoil the book, but I feel like that section would have made so much more impact if we were on Earth, if we were in their shoes and just being like, wait, what's going on? But since we were from his point of view, it didn't have the same impact to me. And then also the book just ended, just done. And I get that we can't, all books can't be like, oh, and this is the flowery everything that happens 10 years from now. No, I get it, but it really felt a little bit too abrupt. It didn't feel like it had a closure in any way. So those are the 2 things that I feel like really should have been changed. But that's just my take on it. And as I said, I gave it 4.5 stars. Then I finally finished Rich People's Problems by Kevin Kwan. I struggle with this one. The first half of the book, except maybe the first 20 pages, I don't remember. I didn't care. I really did not care. Rich People's Problem is the 3rd book and the final book in the trilogy that starts with Crazy Rich in Asia. And I read this last book just to get them finished to Nick and Rachel's story. But the problem for me was that as the books went on, more and more, the side stories got more and more space, and I didn't care about them. And if it weren't for the fact that I basically were like, let's just see how much I get through tonight, and then I will just return it to the library, and I just finish it up because I skipped and skimmed, like, as I said, half the book. I didn't enjoy this book. I did feel pretty pleased with how it ended, but at the same time it felt a little bit more like, let's just get some shock value out of this and make these characters be like, what? Is this real? Like, I gave it 2.5 stars. And then the last book that I finished, and I actually finished it, was Three Majors and a Margarita by Annette Marie. And I'm so happy that I finally finished it, since I started it 18th of May 2019. You definitely should just look up what it's about from someone else that hasn't been reading it for over, what, 7 or 8 months? Holy, yeah. The thing with this one, it's not bad. It definitely wasn't bad. Just, I didn't feel like listening at all. And since I didn't really feel like I wanted to switch book because I didn't feel like listening to anything else, I just kept it on there. But when I did listen, I listened to a couple of hours at a time. And I'm actually pretty proud of myself to listen to 4 hours in a month, considering that I'd listened to like 3 hours in 7 months. I gave it 2.5 stars. Didn't feel like I could give it less, and I didn't feel like I could give it more than that. Definitely look it up if you want some urban fantasy with a human that stumbles upon a magical world. So, those were all the 9 books that I read. My favorite was definitely The Martian by Andy Weir. So, what was your favorite book that you read in January? See you next time. Bye!